Mr. Gordon. First of all, a very warm welcome to the agency reporter. So I'll begin with, how do you find Goafest? I think it's your first visit to Goafest.
It is my first visit,
so,
yeah.
What's the vibe here? How do you see the festival? What's your opinion about it?
Do you know the story of the three bears? There's the Papa Bear and the Mama Bear and the Baby Bear. And the Mama Bear was just right. I guess I would say it's just right. It's not too big and it's not too small. And so I think there's a couple of things. We think that festivals are a place to see work, and I think that's true. It's also a place to hear people speak and perhaps inspire us or instruct us or teach us something new. That's also true. But the most important part of any festival is the interaction and collaboration and sharing that happens not in the meetings but outside the meetings. And I think that this festival, by the nature of both Indian people by and large, are very open-hearted, number two, and I learned she used to introduce me to some people from competing networks, and they were all friends. There was not, he said, oh, yeah, we're all friends, doesn't matter. I liked that very much. Number two, the venue itself is interesting because you can be outside or inside, and there's a lot of open space to gather and talk in smaller groups, etc., and larger groups. And number three, it's just beautiful. So I actually wish that I were staying longer because I've enjoyed it so much. So I hope we'll find out if I did well or not, if I get asked back again, but I would come here anytime. I think it's really great, actually.
So you attended a few sessions, you also gave your session. What was your takeaway from the sessions that you attended today?
Well, it's really interesting. In some ways, the market seems to be certainly at pace of, or maybe even a little ahead of some festivals I've been to, in really trying to understand digital transformation and technology and a new kind of way to create for a new tech-enabled consumer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's number one. But number two, which is a funny thing for me to say, people in the sessions actually pay attention. And I'm actually sometimes surprised in some other markets where they come to the sessions, but they're doing other stuff. They're looking at their laptops, they're texting, and they're there for the social experience, but not really to learn or listen. And so what I liked about this audience was there was an eagerness to understand, to learn, to grow, to expand their talent, to really become best in their class. I think that that's refreshing, and it makes anyone who's a speaker want to give more because you are getting, a warm reception. And I was, lastly, I expected that when I looked at the work, being American, that I would probably not understand much of it if it was not in English, or that I would not understand the cultural nuances. And in some cases that was true. Some jokes I didn't understand that this was a famous actor, whatever it happens to be. But by and large, 80% of the time, even if it wasn't in English, I understood the story, I understood what was being said, I understood the human reactions that were had by a mom towards a son, or the father was having, whatever it happens to be, because we're so much more in common as human beings than we have that separate us. And particularly in a digital age, when product differentiation is really sold emotionally as well as rationally, and probably more important emotionally, the things that connect us are more the same than separate us. So therefore, it was really inspiring to see the work. I also think the work demonstrates, frankly, what can be done without huge and robust budgets, because usually the budgets are not the size of that they might be in the United States, and yet they've done beautiful pieces of film, great acting, the nuances of the sets, etc., are first class and first rate. Obviously, I know Bollywood has a lot to do with that because it's a big film industry country in general, but still, I've been really impressed.
How do you see, when Happy and McGarryBowen came together, and they got merged into a single agency? So how do you see the growth since then for the entire network, for the entire brand together? How do you see that? Basically, advertising opportunity in India that brought the two, powerhouses together, and how they have shaped the industry in the country.
As I said in my speech, Ashish is one of my favorite people in the network. I would come halfway across the world just because he asked me to, but I happen to love India, so it's not a hard ask. But I now have this new title, meaning Chief Creative Officer for Dentsu Aegis Network. And obviously when you have 60,000 employees in the network and thousands of people in this country, I look at it very differently than perhaps when I just wore a founder and chairman of McGarryBowen hat. I'm very passionate about the brands that we represent because they're big global powerhouses like American Express and Mondelez and Procter & Gamble, et cetera, at McGarryBowen. But I also recognize that we have sister companies in the network who do things that we don't do, and we do things that they don't do. And my job is to serve the clients in totality. So putting together the right set of talents to serve any particular client or solve any particular problem is my job. I think that I have a very simple philosophy. McGarryBowen was good people doing great work for good people. That's what I wanted to do. Meaning, good people, you cannot be a jerk and work at McGarryBowen. Doing great work, that's our aspiration. For good people, meaning we don't take clients that are mean or are that, we just don't take them. Unfortunately, there aren't many, so that's good. But I think that the thing that's very interesting to me, though, is in the end, my belief about advertising as a whole is he who has the best people wins. So in my view, the Dentsu Aegis culture, by being a people-based culture with very strong values, will get and keep the best people, and therefore that's my job. Get the best people. I have the best people in the market. I don't have to solve the problem. I've got the best people to do that. So my job is really chief inspiration, chief culture officer. It's not solve the problem. It's hire the people that will solve the problems by creating the best environment for them. That's my job.